Have you ever felt that something is holding you back, preventing your personal or professional growth? Imagine discovering that the barriers keeping you stagnant are, in fact, excuses you created yourself. Today, we will reveal the 7 excuses that prevented David from growing, and perhaps they are holding you back too. Prepare yourself for a journey of self-discovery that can transform your life. Each dismantled excuse is a step toward your maximum potential. And if you want to be part of a community that seeks constant evolution, subscribe to the channel right now. This way, you won't miss any content that could be the boost you needed for your success. Let's together unravel these excuses and pave the way for the growth you deserve. Let's get started. Meet David, a dedicated man full of ideas and dreams, but who felt as if he were stuck in a routine with no progress. He saw people around him achieving goals, reaching new heights, while he remained in the same place. But why? Excuse number 1, I don't have time. David constantly told himself and others, I would love to learn a new language, start that course, exercise more, but I just don't have time. This phrase became his mantra, a justification for everything he couldn't accomplish. But let's think together, is the problem really the lack of time, or is it the way David is managing his 24 hours? Imagine that David spends on average 2 hours a day on social media, browsing aimlessly. He spends another hour watching television and perhaps some more time on activities that don't add value to his goals. If he reorganized his priorities, he might discover that he has more available time than he thought. Once, a mentor told David, time is the most democratic resource there is. We all have the same 24 hours. What differs is how we choose to use them. This phrase resonated deeply with David. He decided to conduct an experiment. For a week, he wrote down all his activities and how much time he dedicated to each one. In the end, he was surprised to realize how many hours were being wasted. With this information in hand, he began to reorganize his routine. David started waking up 30 minutes earlier to plan his day. He reduced his time on social media and replaced it with reading or online courses. Little by little, that excuse of "I don't have time" began to lose its strength. And you? Are you also trapped in this trap? How about doing like David and analyzing where your time is being invested? Small changes can free up large blocks of time so you can pursue your dreams and goals. Remember, it's not about having time, it's about making time. When we understand this, we open doors to incredible opportunities. Excuse number 2, I don't have enough resources. David firmly believed that to take any significant step toward his dreams, he needed more money, top-of-the-line equipment, or influential connections. This belief kept him stagnant, looking at the horizon of possibilities, but never taking the first step. One day, while browsing the internet, David came across the story of Juan, an entrepreneur who started his business with just an old laptop and a lot of determination. Juan had no investors, no luxurious office, not even a team. What he had was an idea and the unwavering will to make it happen. This made David think, if Juan managed with so little, what is really stopping me? He realized he was using the lack of resources as a shield to protect himself from the fear of trying and possibly failing. David then decided to reevaluate what he really needed to start. He noticed that many resources were within his reach, and that, in reality, the most important thing was to take the first step. He began frequenting libraries to study, took advantage of free online courses, and started using free tools to develop his skills. Instead of focusing on what was missing, David began to value what he already had. His creativity flourished when he challenged himself to find alternative solutions. He discovered that the limitation of resources can actually be a catalyst for innovation. And here is the big lesson. Often, what we lack in material resources, we can compensate with internal resources like creativity, resilience, and determination. Think about it. How many times have you postponed a project or given up on an idea because you believed you didn't have enough resources? What if, in reality, what you need is more accessible than you imagine? Don't let the lack of resources be the excuse that hinders your growth. Remember Theodore Roosevelt's phrase, "Do what you can with what you have, where you are." David began to chart his path to success when he stopped focusing on what he didn't have and started acting with what was within his reach. And you? Are you ready to do the same? Let's together dismantle this excuse and take another step toward your maximum potential. The journey continues, and the next barrier to overcome may be the key to the transformation you seek so much. Excuse number 3, I'm afraid of failing. David always carried within him a dream to open his own business, something that truly reflected his passions and values. But every time he thought about taking the first step, a wave of insecurity washed over him. The question that wouldn't leave his mind was, what if I fail? One afternoon, while having coffee with his friend Anna, she noticed his worried expression. "Anna, David, you seem distant today. Is something bothering you?" David, "I'm thinking about that project I've always wanted to start, but I can't get the possibility of everything going wrong out of my head. I'm afraid of failing and losing everything." Anna smiled kindly and replied, "Anna, you know, David, I once heard that the greatest failure is never trying. Fear is natural, but it can't be the brake that stops us from moving forward." These words echoed in David's mind. He realized that fear was stealing his chance to experiment, learn, and grow. He decided to face this feeling head-on. He began researching stories of people he admired and discovered that many great successes came after several attempts and, yes, failures. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company before revolutionizing the tech industry. Michael Jordan wasn't selected for his school's basketball team before becoming a sports legend. David reflected, if they hadn't persisted despite the fear and failures, they would never have achieved success. Why would it be different for me? He then decided to take the first step. He made a careful plan, sought guidance, and began to turn his dream into reality. With each small achievement, he felt the fear diminishing and his confidence increasing. Now I want to take a pause and ask you, who is watching us? What dream have you postponed out of fear of failing? Think about it for a moment. Maybe it's learning a new skill, changing careers, or starting a personal project. What is fear preventing you from accomplishing? Share in the comments your experience or that goal you've been putting off. Let's create a chain of mutual support where we can encourage each other to take the next step. Remember, as Nelson Mandela said, I never lose. Either I win or I learn. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. David discovered that by facing his fear of failing, he opened doors to opportunities he never imagined possible. And you, are you ready to face your fear and give voice to your dreams? The journey continues, and in the next chapter, we will explore another excuse that might be preventing you from growing. Stay with us, because the transformation is just beginning. Excuse number 4, I'm not good enough. David always found himself admiring others' achievements. He saw colleagues getting promoted, friends starting successful businesses, people learning new skills with apparent ease. Inevitably, he thought, I could never do that. I'm simply not good enough. This limiting belief had been with him for years, like a shadow that overshadowed his ambitions. Whenever an opportunity arose, he hesitated, letting it slip through his fingers. The fear of not measuring up paralyzed him. One day, while walking in the park, David met an old school friend, Marcos, who was now a recognized artist. Surprised by his friend's success, David couldn't help but ask, "David, Marcos, it's incredible to see how far you've come. You've always had so much talent. It must be wonderful to be born with that gift." Marcos smiled and replied, "Marcos, David, if I told you how many times I thought about giving up, it wasn't easy getting here. There were moments when I believed I would never be good enough." Surprised, David asked, "David, really? But your work always seems so natural, so effortless." Marcos, "Believe me, behind every piece you see, there are hours of practice, failed attempts, and a lot of perseverance. Talent may be the starting point, but it's dedication that takes us forward." These words echoed in David's mind. For the first time, he considered that perhaps what he was missing wasn't innate ability, but rather the willingness to dedicate himself and continuously improve. Determined to change his perspective, David decided to invest in himself. He enrolled in courses, read books, and sought mentors. With each new learning experience, he felt a little more confident. And even when the results weren't immediate, he recognized that he was making progress. He began to understand that constantly comparing himself to others was unfair to himself. Each person has their own journey with different challenges and paces. The important thing was to focus on his own growth. Now, I want to take a pause and ask you, who is watching us? How many opportunities have you let slip by thinking you weren't good enough? Think about the times when the fear of not meeting expectations stopped you from trying something new. What if, instead of self-sabotaging, you gave yourself the chance to evolve step by step? Share in the comments your stories about overcoming insecurity or even the battles you still face in this regard. Your experience can inspire others who are going through the same. Remember the famous quote by Henry Ford, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." Believing in yourself is the first step toward any achievement. David discovered that self-confidence is not something that simply appears, but is built through action and perseverance. Each challenge overcome reinforced his belief in his own abilities, and so he continued his journey, dismantling the barriers that prevented him from growing. In the next segment, we will explore another excuse that might be limiting your potential. Stay with us, because the transformation is just beginning. Excuse number 5. It's too late to start. David watched from the window as the sun set on the horizon, coloring the sky with shades of orange and pink. With a deep sigh, he thought to himself, maybe my time has passed. If I had started years ago, things would be different. This feeling that the boat had already sailed consumed him. At 48 years old, David believed it made no sense to start new projects or pursue old dreams. He felt trapped by the idea that age was an insurmountable obstacle. One day, while walking in the park, he met Donna Lucia, a 65-year-old neighbor who displayed a radiant smile. "David, Donna Lucia, you seem happier every day. What's the secret?" Donna Lucia, "Oh, my dear, I finally fulfilled an old dream. I went back to studying and I'm attending the College of Arts." Surprised, David exclaimed, "David, really? But don't you think it's too late for that?" With a wise look, she replied, "Donna Lucia, it's never too late to follow your heart, David. Age is just a number. What matters is the desire to live fully." These words echoed in David's mind for days. He began to reflect on all the things he wanted to do, but had put aside thinking he was too old for them. He remembered when he dreamed of writing a book, learning to play the guitar, traveling to places he only knew from photos. He realized that the only real impediment was the belief that the time for it had already passed. He decided to challenge this excuse. He enrolled in a creative writing course and, in the first classes, felt an energy he hadn't experienced in a long time. he met people of different ages, all with unique stories and dreams, but with something in common: the desire to start, regardless of time. David realized that the experience accumulated over the years was a great ally. He had stories to tell, experiences that would enrich any project he decided to start. Now, I want to take a pause and ask you who is watching us. Is there something you've always wanted to do but have postponed because you think it's too late? Think about that dormant dream, that skill you've always wanted to develop but have been putting off. What if later was now? Share in the comments what you feel like starting. Who knows? Maybe this is the first step to making it a reality. Your decision can inspire others to do the same. Remember the inspiring words of George Eliot: "It's never too late to be what you might have been." David discovered that each new day brings the opportunity to start anew, to chart new paths, and to bring old desires to life. By abandoning the excuse that it was too late, he opened himself up to a world of possibilities that reignited his passion for life. And the journey continues. In the next segment, we will explore another excuse that might be preventing you from reaching your full potential. Stay with us, because the transformation is just beginning. Excuse number 6. I don't have support from the people around me. David often felt that he was alone in his ambitions. When he shared his ideas and plans with family or friends, he often received skeptical looks or discouraging comments. Friend 1. Do you really want to leave your stable job to take a risk on something so uncertain? Family member: is this a good idea? You have responsibilities, bills to pay. These reactions made David question his own convictions. The lack of support became an invisible barrier, draining his motivation and reinforcing the excuse that without others backing, it wasn't worth moving forward. One day, while browsing an online forum, David found a community of people with interests similar to his own. There, he read stories of individuals who faced similar challenges and who also didn't have immediate support from their close networks. Inspired, he decided to participate in the discussions and share his own experiences. One of the messages that impacted him the most was from Carla, who wrote, "Carla, when I stopped seeking external approval and began to trust my own vision, everything started to flow. I found support in new connections and, most importantly, in myself." David realized he was seeking validation in the wrong places. He understood that not always do the people around us understand our dreams, not out of malice, but because they see the world through their own perspectives and fears. He decided to expand his horizons. He began attending workshops, lectures, and events related to his goals. On these occasions, he met people who shared his passions and who encouraged him to move forward. Additionally, David learned to set boundaries and protect his dreams from negative influences. He started filtering the advice he received, absorbing only what added value to his journey. Now, I would like to take a moment to reflect with you who is watching us. Have you ever felt demotivated by not having support from the people around you? Think about the times you stopped pursuing something out of fear of judgment or lack of encouragement. What if you sought new sources of support and trusted more in your own ability? Share in the comments if you have faced this challenge and how you dealt with it. Your story could be the inspiration someone needs to take the next step. Remember Albert Einstein's words: "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." This means that not everyone will understand your vision, and that's okay. What matters is that you believe in it. David discovered that the most crucial support comes from within. By strengthening his self-confidence and seeking positive environments, he was able to move forward without depending on others' approval. And so, he continued dismantling the excuses that prevented him from growing. In the next segment, we will address the last barrier that David needed to overcome. Stay with us, because the transformation is about to be completed. Excuse number 7, the market is saturated. David always had a latent passion for entrepreneurship. He had innovative ideas and a huge desire to create something of his own. However, every time he thought about launching his project, an inner voice whispered, "Why try? The market is already saturated. There's no room for one more." This belief kept him immobile. He saw other people entering the market, some succeeding, others not so much. But he remained in inertia, convinced that he wouldn't make any difference. One day, while attending an online seminar, he heard the story of Julia, an entrepreneur who managed to stand out in a highly competitive market. She said, "Julia, when I thought about opening my bakery, many told me there were already too many sweets out there. But I knew I could bring something different, something that reflected my identity and passion." These words awakened something in David. He began to question, what if the problem isn't the market itself, but the way I'm looking at the opportunities? He decided to analyze more deeply. He realized that although the market was filled with offerings, there was always room for innovation and for those who brought a differential. He identified underexplored niches, unmet needs, and ways to add value to the customer. David understood that saturation is relative. The market might be full for those who offer more of the same, but it's always open for those who bring novelty, quality, and authenticity. He decided to bet on his unique vision. He developed a product that reflected his ideas and values, focusing on meeting specific demands that others had neglected. With strategy and dedication, he began to carve out his space. Now, I would like to ask you, who is accompanying us? How many times have you given up on an idea because you thought the market was saturated? Reflect on that. Isn't there a way to differentiate yourself, to offer something only you can provide? The world is constantly changing, and new opportunities arise every moment for those willing to see them. Share in the comments your experiences or questions about how to stand out in a competitive market. Let's together build a network of support and inspiration. Remember Oscar Wilde's phrase, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Your uniqueness is your greatest advantage. David learned that instead of fearing the competition, he should focus on how he could stand out. By changing his perspective, he turned the last excuse into motivation to act. Throughout this journey, we accompanied David as he faced and overcame 7 excuses that were preventing him from growing. Each dismantled barrier represented a significant step toward his personal and professional development. David realized that the limitations holding him back were not in the external world, but within himself. By challenging his limiting beliefs, he opened himself up to a universe of possibilities that previously seemed inaccessible. And the great message is, the excuses that prevent us from moving forward are often constructions of our own minds. Now, it's your moment to reflect. What excuses have been holding you back? What is stopping you from achieving your goals and realizing your dreams? I invite you to take action today. Identify an excuse that has limited your growth and think about how you can overcome it. Remember that the first step is to recognize, the second is to act. If this video resonated with you, leave your like and share it with someone who also needs to hear this message. Write in the comments which excuse you are ready to overcome and which insights have helped you the most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any content that can boost your growth journey. Together, we can create a community of support and motivation where each one contributes to the success of the other. Thank you for staying with us until here. Remember, the power to transform your life is in your hands. Don't let excuses prevent you from being all that you can be. Until the next video, stay strong on your journey and never stop believing in your potential.